Good morning. Welcome to Monday Mentorship. My name is Cory Fisk, and I'm the founder of Construction Management Online. Hopefully, some of you are joining us in our 5-day CM Accelerator workshop that we're having this week. But I just want to go ahead and jump right into some of those questions being asked by those working to become the best possible construction managers that they can be. So let's go ahead and start first with our first question. What best practices do you recommend for ensuring a smooth project closeout? So first and foremost, I always preach that we start the project with the end in mind. So always knowing and understanding what that end deliverable is going to need while we're managing throughout the project. This way, when we are putting submittals together and we're collecting, reviewing, and approving those submittals at the very beginning of the project, we can start to see and recognize what types of things might be required in an owner's and maintenance manual at the end of the project. So when we are able to start collecting that information throughout the project, instead of waiting until the very end, then we can get all of that information much easier than after the subcontractor leaves the project. Another example would be in identifying that schedule. What is the schedule going to look like? Not just how many days is it going to take to be able to do a task, but what means and methods are going to be used in the delivery of this task, and how is that influenced by outside situations like weather or delay of materials? And how are we going to create a contingency plan so that when we're looking at the end of the project and there looks like we aren't going to meet the scheduled deadline, that we can really determine the extension of time associated with individual tasks throughout that. So if we're always looking at the end of the project while we are in the midst of our construction management roles and responsibilities, then we can really identify some of these best practices for ensuring a smooth closeout. Now, one of the other things that happens at the closeout stage is going to be the punch list. And in this punch list, we're going to be trying to check off things that are still little things that need to be done on the project. So being able to go through a project punch list and identify before we go on the walk who we might want present, who could actually just maybe fix it right there while we're doing the punch list. So having a carpenter or having a painter on hand while we're going through and walking the punch list is going to be a great tool in being able to close out that portion of the project. We're also going to want to identify things that may really impact this project that aren't going to be complete, that we want to have a dollar or monetary value associated with those items so that we can add some incentive to the project to really have the contractor appreciate how important it is for us that we have this also included in the project closeout. In the project closeout, we can expect things like the turnover of spare parts that need to happen. And so again, going through the specifications and going through those quality control sections and pulling out the requirements of what is going to be end deliverables expected at the end of the project for the owner or client, we can pull those out and create a list so that we have something to work through as we're going through the entire project. So knowing upfront what the spare parts are going to be is going to be important for the contractor, because they're going to have to order that surplus amount in their calculation when they're bringing on those materials to the job site. And so this way they don't have to go out and order extra after the work has already been completed and done. and being able to really identify the important things to the owner and trainer, or excuse me, the owner, which could be training of their new facility that you're getting ready to turn over. What are the expectations of that training? Is it going to be professional training, or is it going to be somebody with a GoPro out there on their hard hat talking through something while their back is turned to the camera and we can't hear anything? So being able to create criteria around those requirements is going to be able to provide a higher quality, more professional product, so that when we are closing out the project, we know that we're going to get everything that we deserve for the owner who paid for this project. So those are just a few examples of things that you might do in order to be able to ensure a smooth project closeout. I would also encourage collaboration meetings and really being able to keep that communication open in those end days. A lot of times we're moving professionals who have been part of the project this whole time that are now moving on to other projects, and then a new person is being brought in to close out the end of the project. So they might not have all of the history associated with the project. So being able to collaborate and keep them up to date is going to be really important in a smooth project closeout. So just a few ideas of things that you might want to try in the creation of a smooth project closeout. So let's move to the next question. If you were planning to leave your current job, how would you approach it, and how would you prepare for an interview? Okay, this is a tough one, right? Because we don't ever want our current boss to know we're looking for work anywhere else. But at the same time, it may or may not be clear whether or not our current employer has available work for us in the future. So this is a really hard one for both employer and employee. I wish that we could be open and honest about all of this. And some people are understanding the value in being able to do that. If you have a great company and people want to work with your company, then understanding that they kind of have to be able to strategize and make plans about their future and their family should hold on to that confidence that you're the company that they would want to stay with. And if they want to move to another company, then it's either because they're seeing something greener on the other side, and that likely is they will come back to your company if treated properly in the exit, or they're not making enough money and they see an opportunity to be able to make more money somewhere else, or they're not getting along with your company, which in that case is probably then not a good fit for either one of you. So I know that it is hard to talk about this, but I think being open and honest is really important. Now, there's some sensitive things that we need to be concerned about, because companies are concerned about employees downloading a bunch of information or taking files or doing things in those last 2 weeks. And so sometimes if someone notifies that they're ready to move on to another employment, instead of giving, they'll give the 2 weeks, but the employer will usually provide them or cut them a check that Friday. And so that is hard because they are planning on those 2 weeks. They thought, well, I've done all this work for this company. Now I've done what I'm supposed to do and given the opportunity for 2 weeks notice so they can find someone to replace me. And now all of a sudden I'm out in the middle of nowhere. And so that's a hard one to work with as well. So there's sensitive company information that we have to be aware of. And then the other thing of just really understanding how difficult this is being able to interview and talk to other companies while you're working for your company. I mean, the company that you're working for would probably be your very best reference. But if you can't tell other companies that you're looking for a new job, then it's likely you don't want them calling your current employer, telling them that, oh, hey, by the way, this person just interviewed with us. What do you think of their work ethic and how they're doing? So Technically, employers can't really ever say anything bad about you. It is something that keeps them from being very elusive of your work productivity. And so just keep that in mind as well. So when we're looking at it, I would suggest one of the things that you do is, I mean, we're always looking for opportunities. It's the nature of the beast. We're competitive. If our company, again, has a perfect community culture, that they have educational opportunities that invest in my training, they have a pathway, succession pathway that allows me to see what the opportunity, where the light at the end of the tunnel is, then it's likely that I'm probably going to be happy and stay with this company for a long period of time. But then there's some of us that just want to try something new, want to try a different type of construction, or want to try to elevate our position. And sometimes the fastest way to do that is to go to work for another company. And so in those cases, we're always going to be keeping our eyes open. Getting your foot in the door is the most important part of getting a job. And working while you're trying to find a job is the most, it's the best way to do it. Because if you're trying to find a job when you don't have a job, then everybody's wondering why you don't have a job. So being able to find work while you have work is an important aspect. Always having a current resume, and having that resume be very clear and concise about your experience and what you've actually done in each of those jobs. Not just necessarily listing the companies that you've worked for, but what are the types of tasks that you performed that are going to give that new company a sense of understanding of your capabilities of taking on the position that they are going to be asking you to do. And then being able to prepare for an interview. So when you're preparing for an interview, it's always good to have a couple memorized paragraphs, usually around what your background is, your work experience, what you've been able to do, what you see yourself being able to do for that company in the future. We want to be very careful about memorization, as we don't want it to sound robotic. We're using this as a point to be able to start our confidence in the discussion. And then once we start rolling in the words, then the new information starts coming in. And so it keeps us from that scary freeze of silence when all of a sudden no one's talking and we're waiting. And it's so incredible that we're not allowed to actually just stop and think about what it is that we want to say. And so don't be afraid to do this. But by having something memorized, it kind of gets our brain out of that frozen state and allows us to be able to then move into the conversation. And the thing is, just be authentic and sincere. Just tell it like it is. I mean, this is the thing that I find so funny, is that we have HR people looking at resumes in order to be able to select individuals who are supposed to be working on certain jobs. And yet our jobs that we're being asked to interview for are not in the creation of resumes, or are not in how well you conduct an interview. Our jobs are usually something that are very tactical, something that we're going to be able to dive into, we're going to be able to organize, manage, be able to curate. And so knowing that what your interview is doing is really showing how you're going to interact in that position. So being able to communicate is going to be a huge part of that. So just being able to tell a story about yourself and your history, to be able to have a nice conversation as if you're not at an interview at all. You're just over lunch explaining to someone the work that you've done in the past and how much you appreciate the growth that you've had through the different opportunities, and how those opportunities have helped you see future opportunities. And now you really have a great understanding of how to be able to promote this company and help them in productivity and profit. and just make it an easy conversation. So our last one is, how do you handle a difficult client? So I actually had this conversation with a past student the other day. They called up and they're a general contractor and they were working on an individual's house. And they were like, Professor, I've got this client and I just can't get rid of this client. Like, I try to do everything I can to make this woman happy and nothing is working and I am bleeding. I need to be able to get out of this project. So what do I need to do? And so, of course, I could just spit out the answer of what needs to be done and then move on. But we decided to break it down. And I think that this is really important because if we don't understand what got us there in the first place, then we're not going to be able to take care of the future. Okay, so what got us there in the first place? So I was talking to him about the designer for the project. He's like, I've worked with this designer before. They've suggested other clients, never been any problem. The drawings were robust. The interior design was all taken care of. All of the materials were identified. The drawings were easy to build from. But on this project, all I got was a rendering. I just really got just a picture of what the expectation was. And I said, okay, so you were already given one red flag. And that red flag is, why did the designer only provide this, knowing that you were going to need everything that you've needed on previous projects in order to complete this? And he goes, yeah, I just thought that because our relationship was so good that we could start working. And then when I reached out to the designer to ask where the rest of the information was, she said, well, you know, I'm not working for this client anymore. Second red flag. Okay. So unfortunately, the contract had already been let at this point in time, which if you're a contractor and you're providing an estimate and a bid for a conceptual idea or design, you're putting yourself at a very high risk scenario, mostly because clients don't understand construction the way a designer and a contractor understand construction. So a client sees what they want in the finished stage. They have no idea the criteria and the amount of detail that goes into each step in order to be able to create what they think they want. And so it's very important to make sure that you have construction drawings to move forward with. So flag 2, we don't have construction drawings. So number 3 is that he starts performing this work and the client sounds maybe a little bit picky about things. So that color's just not right, or no, that's not how I wanted it. I know that's what the rendering shows, but now that I see it, I kind of want it to be more rounded or what have you. Okay, flag number 3 is that when we have someone that's like this, there's 2 roads that you're looking down. You're either looking at a client who wants to get everything for nothing, or you're looking at a client who doesn't understand the construction process and they're not going to get a free, full-fledged mock-up submittal to make their decisions in 3D and then have you go back and fix everything to what they think they now want. And so when you notice this at any of those stages, you should be reinforcing the contract. So obviously our contract wasn't as strong as it needed to be in the beginning if we're still going through these red flags. And so being able at that point to stop before money is bled out and identify, you know, owner, it seems that we're not on the same page. It's really important that we get our expectations tied down, because going and doing the work and then having to go back and redo it is not going to work for either one of us. And so trying to do that upfront and early is really important. Now, unfortunately, this contractor has done it on several different scopes of work. So now we're impacting the subcontractor. and we're impacting the subcontractor who doesn't have the right color grout or who doesn't have the correct thickness of the masonry. And so now they're having to redo work or, complete work that's already been completed. And then the famous one, well, no, I really don't like that color either. Let's go back to the first color. I mean, this is just crazy, right? And so we have to understand that there just really are some people who can't see something until it's actually done. And this is where you might want to try a mock-up or be able to do just kind of what it would look like in real life, but in a much smaller package in order to be able to help satisfy this kind of a client. And this is a lot of clients, right? Because being able to see something on a flat piece of paper and bring it to life in your mind takes a lot of creativity, imagination, and vivid understanding of the construction process. And you can have a person looking at magazines or looking at pictures off of websites, but when it comes to life in real life, if it doesn't look exactly like that picture, then there's some expectations that have been set in their mind that haven't necessarily been transmitted into the contractual requirements. So what we came up with was that he needed to stop the work in the moment that he was doing it. He needed to be able to identify extra work that he had been performing all along in order to be able to keep this client happy. And then understand that any new changes that were asked for in the future needed to have a scope of work and a change order and a cost amount applied to them and presented before the work was completed, so that the owner or client would have a choice of whether or not she was going to be happy with the work that was provided, or if she now was willing to pay extra in order to be able to get exactly what she wasn't able to express before the original scope of work was completed. So these clients can be difficult ones. I honestly just suggest vetting very hard before you move into a contract like this, understanding your client before. It's really hard in construction. We want to take the job because we're needing the money. But I'm telling you that these kind of jobs, the deeper you get into them, the more of a headache they are than an actual profit. And so it's better just to avoid them altogether. So I hope that this was a good Monday mentorship. Again, just reminding all of you that we're right now in the midst of our 5-day Construction Management Accelerator Workshop. So every morning this week at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we are going through the summary of what you can expect in our 12-week Construction Management Essentials. And this 12-week program is really giving you everything that you need to know in your first year of construction management. And really what that's telling me is that whether you're first year construction management or 10 years in construction management, there's always steps that we skip. And if we don't have a strong foundation, a widespread footing to be able to support our vertical personal growth, then we're going to really be missing what we need when we get to the top. So this Construction Management Essentials is a complete comprehensive guide to being able to understand drawings, to be able to understand estimates, budgets, schedules, how to write a pay application, what is retention, how to put a change order together, how to provide a submittal, in a way that uses these as tools then throughout the management of your entire project. So we'll be starting this cohort in the middle of November, and I'm excited to be able to get started with a new group of students. And so that again moves us to inviting you to next Monday for our Monday mentorship at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I also want to remind everyone to subscribe to our newsletter, which just hits different topics in the construction industry to just keep you well-rounded in everything that we're doing. And then also our YouTube page, which is in current development, but is starting to really pick up momentum. And you're going to find a lot of free information from videos that might be a different platform more favorable to some of you. So have an absolutely amazing week, and thank you again for being here.